This is one type of analysis that you could do on survey data. This is old survey data, so these are different values than you will be working with, I'm sure, but this gives an idea of at least one way to apply regression analysis to the survey data for the purposes of understanding what the data can tell you. So let's take this situation here. We have over 200 surveys here, and then we have the different survey item titles across the top, and then the values. And let's just assume this is all nice, clean data, which it is, and blanks have been eliminated from it. Any NRs have been eliminated from it. We don't always have to eliminate NRs, but certainly any items that you plan to do analysis on should all have any kind of blank or bad data removed. So if, for example, survey 4, I'm going to do an analysis of changed view. So if there were NRs or blanks in here for survey 4, I would eliminate survey 4 for the purposes of the analysis. So I've already inserted a pivot table here based on this table of data. Let's click in there. And of course, it comes up with the options. And like I said, for this one, I'm going to take changed view, whether somebody attending Trinity Western had a change of view. And as I analyze that, I can't total. Don't let me see sums. Almost never in a situation like this will adding the scores together be a good idea. Averaging them, counting them, mins, max, standard deviation, those are the kinds of things that you're going to want to do. So this is the average of the changed view, and I don't know that it'll work, but let's set the formatting to 2 digits. So on here now, what I'm going to do is I want to see if view changes over time based on the amount of studying done at Trinity Western. So here we have credits, which are, this is valuable data in the sense that it can be anything from 0 up, and therefore it's fairly powerful data. One would argue that you could do ratio data, and therefore it's eligible as a factor for regression. Now, as far as my columns, what I'm going to do is a couple of analyses, but the first analysis would be to see if gender changes gives me different results here. So gender is male, female. If I go right here above credits, there's gender, and I can put gender here. So now I have the credits going down, I have the genders across, and in this case all I have are male and female, and then a grand total, which would be obviously the average overall. Sometimes that is all I need. Right now I'm going to look at that. So this was the analysis that led to this summary table. There were no others in here. But anyway, so let's see what happened. I did a scatter chart, and then I put trend lines on. By now you should know that you can do plus and go to trend line. What you might not know is that you can do multiple trend lines. If you go in here, right now it probably won't do it because I already have all relevant data done. But if you click on more options, oh, there we are. It should come up with add a trend line. And of course I can choose other and click OK. I don't want to because I really don't see the value of it. But if I was to click OK, you would see a third line appear here. So what I do have, I have the lines, I have the dots, and what I see here is no difference in terms of males versus females as the number of credits increases. So that's a result that tells me something. There's no difference by gender in the gap. This is gap, so remember that's true minus important. So that was the one analysis I did in this case. I went back and I also did one where I grabbed the same kinds of data for whether it was a commuter, resident, or whether they have an experience of both. The interesting thing, there's not a lot at the lower levels of credits who have both experiences. You usually get higher in the number of credits before you start to see someone who's had both kinds of experience, which is interesting in and of itself. Anyway, so here we see some variance by in terms of this one's going down, this one's kind of going across, this one's increasing. And that makes something look a little more interesting. Maybe I wish there was more of a difference, but nevertheless, that leads me to want to do a deeper analysis. So, for example, here I look at my average gap score, and those who have both kinds of experience, the gap is the only negative gap. The others, residents, are almost perfect because they're almost exactly zero. And commuters are just slightly positive. Also a very good score. And really, this is not that serious. It's not like I'm going to call a crisis meeting over a slightly negative gap score on both. But it gives me something to pursue. So as I look at that again, I actually can look at things more fully. Here's an example of overall. So I have just the dots for the overall average compared to what happens with both. And so here's an example of looking at this more fully. Now, the other thing I want to point out is, you notice over here I was able to actually accentuate the lines by changing them a little bit. So I just want to show you how you can do that. So I have this selected here, and I'm going to go under Shape Outline, and I'm going to change the weight of it, maybe make it a little thicker. And then I am going to change the dashes to a solid. Let's do dashed here. So that allows you to change the line. So coming back to this, we notice that they're divergent in the end. There may be a variety of reasons for it, some important, some not. So what we're going to do then is this one, the gaps obviously are doing something. The question is what? So I'm going to skip these where I did separate analysis and go straight to where I did a combined analysis on residential. I took a look at the true, I took a look at the important, and I did some charts for them. And so here we have a case of where I can compare what's happening in the true and what's happening in the important. The interesting thing here is that in terms of truth, they all stay right here for the most part. In other words, do they believe that Trinity does have an impact in terms of a changed view? The response, obviously some dots are right up here. It definitely was true for these people. And then you have some others down here that are like indifferent. Very few are on the side of saying, no, it didn't change my view, which is, again, something notable. But what's really interesting then is, well, then where did that divergence come from on the gap? Well, if we look over here, this is where we see the divergence. The divergence is coming that over time, the longer somebody's at Trinity, the more their opinion on the importance of changed view changes. So if we look at the numbers for that, we'll see that in terms of true, the average score for true is just under 1, whereas important, the average score where they have both experience is 1.26. Commuters, true is 1, and then importance is 0.76. Interesting, isn't it, that for commuters, a changed view, or the fact that the experience should influence them, is less important. So there's a number of things that could be done with that, but the main thing to realize is that it's these things here that result in the divergence on the gap. And also interesting that for commuters, there's a very divergent view. In other words, the standard deviation is larger, not hugely different. A significant difference would be like a 2 here as opposed to the 0.82 or 0.99. Nevertheless, there is slightly more deviation in view. But anyway, so this is a secondary analysis that takes a look at this. One more thing that helps us is, because we have the dots on here, notice out here there are no dots, or there are almost no dots. You have a couple of them here, but what that also tells you, if you look in terms of the dots, the line is going this direction, not because there's something happening out here, but because the last impact is about here for the brown in particular. See, the reds carry on out here, so that keeps it from dropping, even though there's a couple of reds here. The line continues out. The blue kind of tends to up because you have this. So just being aware that it's, for example, let's just simply put that the direction of the line near anything over 120 credits, which is typical graduation, right? This is typical amount that somebody graduates with. What's on beyond here, there just aren't that many people. And so dramatic changes in scores are going to overly influence the regression line. So you have to take that into consideration as you try to draw conclusions from the data. If there's not a lot of data in a region, you want to be careful about not drawing too many conclusions. This is what's really interesting is in that last year before graduation is that it's all in the positive. They tend to agree that it's true, but they rarely disagree that it's true, but they definitely vary in how much it's true. And then, like I said, over here, there's a real difference in terms of importance. It's all still positive. Here's 0. Well, not all positive. Here are your negatives. But it's changing in terms of emphasis. But I wouldn't draw strong conclusions from this last piece here because I really have lost much data beyond that. I might even cut this off here, eliminate these data points out here to see what it does to my regression line if I only use the data to here. That's an idea of an analysis you can do on the survey data with regression.